Right, good morning, Year 9s. So I'm not here for period 1, but I'll be with you period 2. So we've moved on to Python programming now, and what I'd like you to be working on is the activities that I've set on Teams that you can see in front of you, and also from the Computer Science Hub. So if I just click here, you'll see that the web page loads up. So this is what we're going to be doing today. This is today's PowerPoint. I have it opened up in another window, which looks like this. You're going to need to use Trinket, which is a website that you can use for coding in Python. When I come back after the lesson, I'll show you how to use Python Idle, and that's the app that we used in year 8. So I have my screen set up like so, and I'd suggest you split your screen with my video, and then also have Trinket opened up so that you can do some of the coding tasks with me just to test it out. So this is your do it now task, but we'll leave that for the time being. So what we're going to be doing is learning how to code in Python. We're going to be looking at different data types such as integers, floats and strings. In the second part of our lesson, we'll be looking at how you can use the if and else statement. So your starter activity, having a look at this code on the PowerPoint slide, what do you think it will do? So the first part, let's say section 1, we've got 3 variables. The variables are in black writing or black text. It sets values of these variables. So we've got correct password is equal to PA55WORD. Guesses is equal to 0, and we also have another variable which is actually equal to nothing. It's just an empty string. Section 2. So this is a while loop, and what's going to happen is that it will keep looping whilst the person's guess is not equal to the correct password. It will ask the user to have a guess, and then the third line over here, it will add 1 to the guess variable, and then at the end, once we are out of the loop, it will print a message to say password guessed correctly. Section 3. This will work out how many guesses it took and prints out the result. What would happen if you just had the last line and made 1 guess? Well, if your guess is equal to 1, it would say that took you 1 guess. Otherwise, it would output that took you a certain number of guesses. So that will output a number. So data types. There's 3 data types that you need to know. Text, we refer to that as a string. Text that has speech marks, or it could be text and numbers, or any other characters, that is also called a string, just like a postcode has text and numbers. Number 3 is an integer, or also known as a whole number, and 1.618 is a float, also known as a decimal fraction. So variables have to be a certain type. So a plus b is equal to ab. Does 3 plus 7 equal 10 or 37? Well, you don't know unless you really specify what type of data your variable is storing. So in Idle's interactive mode, we haven't really set that up yet, and I'll show you when I see you in the lesson. So using Trinket, I'm going to type the code from the PowerPoint and we'll see what happens. And you can do this as well. so you can test it out and see. So I'm going to type in value equals free, and I'm just going to make my text larger so hopefully you can see it on your screen. So if I run this now, we can just see. So I get 33. So I have a variable called value, it's equal to 3, but bear in mind we have the speech marks. So what happens over here is that it outputs 3 next to 3. So this is called concatenation, when you're joining strings together. If I do the same now, but just slightly different, what do you think will happen now? Especially since I don't have the speech marks. Well, if you've guessed it's going to output 6, then you're correct. So that's what happens over here. It actually does the arithmetic inside the brackets. Okay, casting. Casting is a technical name for converting a variable from one data type to another. So I am now going to change my code so that it says value equal int, which is referring to an integer, and I'm going to type value over here. So now when I run it, it doesn't appear to have done that much, but what it has done, because I didn't have to type in value equals 3, it's actually done the calculation already, and it's done it as an integer. So by typing int in front of the variable, it's changed the data type to an integer, and we call that casting. Okay, now moving on. If you need a whole number, you can use an int, and if you need a decimal number, you can use the term float. So if I now change my value over here, I'm just going to change some of the code now. So let's just change that to 1.6. So now let's see what happens now. And what I'll do is I'll do it line by line to see. So if I run it, we should get 1.618, which we do. And then if I now add these 2 lines, what do you think will happen? What will output over here? Will we get 1.618, or will we get something else? So let's see. So we get number 1 because we only want to output the whole number, which is an integer. So you can also use the str command to output a string. So let me just change my variables now. We have money equals 15. We have print. You have plus money. Let's see what happens. So we get an error, and that says you cannot concatenate str and int objects together. So where it says line 8, it's referring to this bit here, which is highlighted. So you can't join different data types. So one way that you can solve this is by changing the by adding str in front of the variable. So if I type in str open bracket and close bracket, that should rectify the problem. Now it says you have £15. So that's how you can use the str to cast. So pseudocode is a kind of structured English, and if you are taking computer science as for GCSE, you will learn more about this, and you'll be given questions in either pseudocode or in the OCR exam reference language. And the whole point of pseudocode is just really for somebody to look at an algorithm or describe an algorithm without really knowing how to code. It's really good when programmers are thinking of how to create a program or an app without really knowing how to code. So it's one way to explain how a potential program could work. So this is an example of an algorithm. So we've got a message that will output on the screen, or just output print, welcome to the mill price splitter. We're going to have a variable called value. So where you have the arrow sign, that means that that data or the message, how many people need to pay, that will be stored inside the variable called value. We also have another variable called people, and this is an example of casting because the data is going to be, this means that the value variable is an integer and it's going to be stored inside people. This is another output message, but the message or the answer that the person types in will be stored inside the variable value. So we're going to have a message that says how much was the bill, and that will be stored there. Again, we have another variable called bill, which will store the value as a floating or decimal number. Then we have a calculation here, which is equal to the bill divided by people, which will be stored inside price each. And then at the end, it will output a message to say each person should pay and the amount that it costs. So this is an example of what the actual algorithm would look like once it's coded in Python. So it's quite similar. It just doesn't have the arrows. It has the equal signs for assignment. So I'm going to stop now, but I'd like you to have a go at worksheet 1A, which is called data types, and that is in the class notebook.